Hi, good evening. My name is Nalani Lindier. I'm the director of TACID here, and we're delighted that you're here. TACID serves folks with all sorts of disabilities, visible and invisible, including behavioral health challenges. And we, during the pandemic, started an online group for Black and brown young men and women, simply to talk about how hard it was in that time, seeing all those murders, being locked in our houses, right? And it was very clear how, by the popularity of that group, that the issues of Black mental health are complex, are tilted in some ways, and are real. And while that particular group is on pause here right now, we are very committed to the issue, and we have some wonderful board members who actually brought this to life and said, let us continue this conversation. So I thank you, those who planned this together, and I am very happy to have this here at TACID tonight. A couple of little things: the restrooms, you pass them on the way in, so they are down the hall and to the left. And I'm going to pass around a clipboard because I forgot to ask you to sign in. So. And with that, we are very pleased and honored that Deputy Mayor Kiara Daniels is here to say a few words and welcome you.
Thank you so much, Nailani. I am so happy to be here. It feels crazy to be talking on a mic, but I know we've got folks on camera, and I don't know how everybody's hearing it, so I am happy to use it. One of the things that I get to do as deputy mayor is welcome folks that are doing really great work in our city. And one of the things that we get to do, that I have one of the not so fun parts about my job is responding and being present for what it looks like when we don't support our mental health, and when our social security network is fragmented, right? I get to respond to the end of the road for the worst case scenario for our mental health disparities. And so it's really an honor to be in this space where you folks are working at the beginning of that. Because we know it shows up in so much more than just suicide. We know it shows up in our day-to-day life. It shows up in our interactions with the police. We know they can be, I think it's 30% more deadly if we're suffering through some kind of mental health battle. There's just so many things that this work impacts, and I'm really proud to see people that I guess doing the work and making it more accessible for others. The other part of that is just that I love to see how much normalizing is being done in the media. I'm sure you all will talk about that later on. And I hear so many of my friends and young people talking about therapy, and you see so much stuff online, like come healed, you know what I mean? And so the therapy conversations and the working through and really identifying what's going on inside is really it's becoming normalized. And I believe in God, and I also have a family that serves God, but also, we believe that we can pray everything away, and that is not the reality for some of us. And I think we can, give God the alley-oop and do our part, and so he can finish the rest for us. So I don't want to take up too much time. I'm just here, number one, because I love my senator. She really wanted to be here tonight, and I would do anything, for her. And she wanted to make sure that you all felt supported and knew that your state supports you, but also your city. So thank you so much for the work, and thank you all for being here.
Good evening, everyone. All right, y'all act like it's first Sunday now. Good evening, everyone. All right. We want to thank you so much, Deputy Manager Daniels, for being here, for the work that you do, and the impact that you are making. It is appreciated. I know sometimes it is a thankless job, but know that you are thanked and welcomed here all the time. On behalf of TACID, the board members, our dedicated staff, our absolutely wonderful volunteers, we welcome you all here tonight. We're grateful that you have chosen to join us in this community conversation today. Before we drive right into this critical topic, I just want to share personally why it's so important to me. As a mom with 2 kids with disabilities, my children have special health care needs, but there's always a mental health component attached to that, living with a disability that they were born with. I'm also the wife of a retired disabled combat Army veteran. I have worked in special health care, special education for a very, very long time. I have segued into higher education, but I am always a champion for helping students with disabilities and special health care needs transition into higher ed, whether it is a trade school, an academic pathway, continuing education. No matter what it is, I am their champion and want to always continue to be their champion. Black mental health is important because it is a vital part of the overall well-being. Yet it is disproportionately impacted by systematic racism, historical trauma, and social economic inequalities. Prioritizing Black mental health is essential for individuals and a community-wide healing, and it's an act of resilience and perseverance in the face of persistent adversity. This is not a new challenge for us. We cannot understand mental health in our community today without acknowledging the centuries of racial injustice that we have perceived, that we've been through. So consider the historical abuse and exploitation of Black Americans, the brutal surgical experiments that J. Marion Sims performed on enslaved Black women without anesthesia or their consent. The famous Tuskegee study, where Black men were deliberately denied treatment for syphilis for over 40 years. The consistent exploitation of Henrietta Lacks cells at Johns Hopkins Hospital, which became the cornerstone of modern medical research. And the involuntary hysterectomies performed on Black women in the South, so often referred to as the Mississippi appendectomy. Mental health struggles in our communities we face are direct results of that ongoing trauma. The consistent stress and persistence of racism, microaggressions can truly lead to higher rates of anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Today, Black adults are more likely to experience mental health problems than their counterparts, but they are far less likely to receive the care that they truly need. This is due to significant barriers. I am so sorry, that's me. I apologize. I wanted to make sure I was on time today. I know, right? But that was making sure that I was here. That was the second one. Apologies. So the consequences of failing to address these needs are very severe. Suicide rates among Black youth have risen dramatically. In the healthcare system, implicit bias and other forms of structural racism lead to misdiagnoses and inadequate treatment. Without proper mental health care, untreated conditions can lead to further issues from substance abuse to increased risk of incarceration. And yet, despite these immense systematic challenges, the Black community has cultivated immense strength and resilience. We find this strength in our spirituality, our strong family ties, our community ties, and our creative expressions. By holding the conversation tonight, we are honoring the legacy of that perseverance. We are also advocating for better support and resources. So structural racism in healthcare persists today through discriminatory policies, biases through medical algorithms, false racist beliefs about biological differences that unfortunately still exist in some medical educations today. Implicit biases held by providers, leading to misdiagnoses and undertreatment, and a lack of diversity within the healthcare profession itself. This troubling history and its present-day effects contribute to deep-seated mistrust that Black Americans have within the healthcare system. This is not an irrational fear. Let me say it one more time. This is not an irrational fear, but a logical response to documented history of abuse and injustices. So tonight, we honor the immense strength and resilience the Black community has cultivated through that spirituality, through those strong family and community ties, and those creative expressions. By highlighting mental health, we can honor this legacy while advocating for better support and resources. Again, we want to welcome you and thank you all for being here tonight. So just a little housekeeping. This presentation is being recorded, so if you don't want to be on camera, I'll give you a second to get out. No, I'm just playing. Don't leave. Please don't leave. So only the panelists will actually be shown on the video. It is a wide shot of us. And after the presentation, there will be time for questions and answers. We'll ask the audience members to use the microphone so that their questions will be heard on the recording. I am going to give a moment for all of our panelists to be able to introduce themselves, and we welcome our panelists.
Good evening. I'm David Strong, most recently Executive Director of NAMI of Pierce County, and I am a big advocate for the work of peer support for folks living in this community. I come to this by way of my sister who lives with mental illness from things that happened as a child. I come to this by way of my cousin who won Printer of the Year in Phoenix in 2022, and that very day he took his life. And I remember saying there's something I want to be able to do to help people with mental illness. And so I believe in peer support. I believe in therapy. I certainly, as a reverend, believe in spirituality as a way for us to grow and gather.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Porter, and I happen to be on TACID board as well. And I work for Sound Behavioral Health in King County. I have a dual role at Sound Behavioral Health. So I actually work as both a clinician and I work for our HR. I'm the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coordinator. So I work in two places in that place. In terms of my passion for this work, I have, I would say, a couple of components. I started off as a certified peer counselor, going through my own pieces, and then also because of experiencing it within my own family, seeing my mother go through it and then hearing it in my own family. But also I all of a sudden got drawn to helping youth with behavioral issues for a lot of years and seeing the trauma they were going through. And then all of a sudden my path just completely changed. Jobs started opening, asking me to work with youth with severe behavioral problems. And then I started working with foster youth, helping and being approved to work with them. And it just continued from there. I've worked with multiple populations, and next thing you know, I was a social worker, and I started doing counseling and continuing my education towards that, and I love it. I wouldn't change it, or any of the populations I've worked with, and I believe it's extremely important.
Hello, my name is Khalila Fordham. I am a clinical psychologist, licensed clinical psychologist, and I am the founder of the Greenhouse Foundation, a 501c3 to increase access to mental health supports. And I also run Gray Matter Solution, my private practice and psychological consulting agency. I got into the work because my own familial experience of mental health struggles growing up in South Carolina, deep in the South, the systemic oppression that my personal family has struggled, coming from a family of a number of veterans, Army, Navy, primarily Navy, both my parents, grandparents, and the Marines, seeing the trauma that they've often suffered that's rarely addressed, seeing the way that they're treated in their local communities, seeing how they're treated nationally, how they're talked about, initially created this passion, then becoming a clinician, being in academic environments where you're often challenged, one with information of how you believe society is supposed to function, then seeing how our work does not meet the standards that it sets for itself and doesn't treat people within the system equally to get the support that they need to recover. And then having experienced that inequity and the oppression within the system myself, when I myself experienced burnout post-pandemic, getting to the point where it started to destroy my body. You're working as much as you can, getting ingrained into the hustle culture, because at some point it's really hard to keep pushing away that belief, or it's really hard to keep pushing away that narrative that you're never working hard enough. You always try to overcome it, but to the point that you actually work yourself into the ground. Then getting misdiagnosed over and over, being told that the symptoms that you're experiencing are your fault, being told, even though you're telling them that you're following the routines, you're following the medical standards even higher, because they really work it into you as a clinician, but no, you're still not doing that, and it's something else going on completely. Somehow, it's magically your fault. And then not providing you the care that you've worked so hard to create within the system that you tried to sustain. So I created the organizations that I did to increase access to support, to make sure that every provider who wants the information gets access to the most effective treatments that work with various populations, not just the ones that they were sold during the education they were pushed into. Khalila Fordham. I was just asked what my name was. I responded Khalila, and I was reminded that it says Dr. Khalila Fordham. Yes, I am Dr. Khalila Fordham. Mm-hmm.
So good evening. My name is Ulysses Cheney, and I'm very honored to be here, and it's been a blessing to hear everybody on this panel at this table to speak, and our deputy mayor. I currently have a number of roles and positions I serve in. I am a state employee for the state of Washington, but I'm also a professor at Tacoma Community College right over here. And I want to put a disclaimer, everything I say is a reflection of me, and neither one of the organizations that I'm a part of. It's just my own. I'm here as a private citizen. I grew up in a time where in the Black community, any type of mental health or behavioral health issues was not spoken of, especially among children. And the only ones that it was spoken among was those that had what we consider a need to know. However, we always recognized that there was always a need for that support, even if that support was not necessarily given by healthcare providers. And as was already indicated, in most cases, the ministers of the churches in our communities are the ones that provided us that behavior and mental health support with a lot of prayer, fasting, and engagement to help work with our kids and work with our adults, especially our aging adults that were suffering with dementia and other type of mental health aging conditions that took place. But we as children, as I was growing up, witnessed these things and could not understand it. In my years of life, I have went from being a person raised up in the South to see these things and not understand it, to a person that served in the military for 30 years and seen how within the black community, even in the branches of the military, that behavioral health and mental health was something that was deep rooted, that was not truly talked about because of a number of stigmas associated with it, especially within the black community. We did not want to talk about it, acknowledge it, except in those close circles that we trusted that can help us do it. And we definitely was not going to go to someone who did not look like us to talk about our problems, because we did not think they understood the depth of what we face. As a person myself, I remember being a kid, and because I was not applying myself to my academic studies, I was labeled retarded. We don't use that word today, but that was the word used when I was growing up. But it's because I was not encouraged, I was not mentored well to really apply myself to learn. Apparently, I'm smarter than what I thought I was, because I got a couple of masters and everything else, and I have excelled and did well. My thought related to behavioral health for us, and I think it was already mentioned earlier, is that we are becoming more and more aware of the need, and we're finding comfort that the behavioral health services that we need are available to us. We may not have a lot of clinical psychologists that look like us, but we do have those people out there that are out to support us, that can help us to deal with those things that are important to us, to help us navigate the world in which we live. And that's what this panel is here to do, to ensure that people that really want the tools understand how to evaluate providers to get the tools needed to help them.
Give our panelists a round of applause one more time. We've got some great folks up here that we're going to go ahead and start with our first question. So, what are the most significant mental health challenges facing Black adults and families today? Who'd like to go first?
Oh, this right here? So, I've been a person that observant and working in my job at the department that I work at for the state government, and being a professor at Tacoma Community College. And again, all my comments are my own and not reflect these organizations. I think the thing that I find most significant challenges for Black adults and families today is them being able to know that the access is available to them, and feeling comfortable with the reality that they can get the same services provided to them as people that do not look for them. I think the barrier to this health is, as the good doctor mentioned before, the idea of being blamed for your own condition, and not really the provider understanding that it's more than what we do to ourselves. It's the world that we try to navigate. And even here in Washington, which is a very progressive and beautiful state to live in, there yet still remain challenges related to bigotry that we still have to deal with on a day-to-day basis in almost every environment that we walk in also. However, I think in this environment too, we have more opportunities to grow, to develop, and to get those services that we need to help our Black families to grow and to develop. I think that additionally, the mental health challenges facing Black adults and families now is the abilities of families to connect within themselves sometime too, to be able to reach out and get that family support like we used to have when I was growing up, and that's where the primary support came. We see a lot of things taking place, and our kids are able to see more representation of themselves in the bad places than in the more positive environments that show that they can be a lot more than what they have seen negative about themselves as a people.
Okay. So I think one of the things that I would say is one of the most significant challenges is, I would say, navigation of resources. A lot of people, I think, don't know how to navigate it. And so because they don't know how to navigate it, it's assumed that the system is almost used against them. So I think oftentimes people, for me, I believe if I have the knowledge, I'm going to share it as much as I can. So for me as a social worker, I'm one of those people who says, I'm going to give you the tools and I want you to use them. Even if it means I have to give it to you step by step, I'd rather give it to you so that you have the tools to do it yourself. And so I'm one of those people that's a teacher as a social worker. And so I think it's knowing the information and knowing your right to the information. So a lot of people don't know that insurance is required now to update every year their BIPOC provider list. So they have to keep that updated annually, or they are actually going to be sued, and there's a lawsuit after. Like Primera was just filed a lawsuit for not updating their provider list for BIPOC and LGBTQ resources. Most people don't know that. So they're like, oh, there's not a new provider here. You can push that. Go to Primera, go to your insurance and say, hey, you all have not given me a list of providers that meet my needs. So those are things that people don't know. And so if we give the tools for you to know that information, then you can be successful. So I think the big thing is if you don't have the tools, then you don't know you're missing it in the first place. So the more we can share with each other, the more likely people are to be successful. And that's something I think we often miss, is sharing the tools that we have with each other so that people can be more successful.
And I would say the two challenges that we have, and I think we don't know which causes the other, but they both are significant, is social isolation and stigma. People are afraid to talk about what they're going through, don't know who they can trust when they talk to someone. And then we have this the stigma of people looking down on folks with behavioral health. And to some degree, all of us have different things that are going on. And so we have to find ways to break that social isolation and reduce the stigma that many people face living with mental illness.
Where should I start? So if I'm highlighting some big themes, I would say one of the biggest is unhealed past and ongoing trauma. You hear about a lot of different types of mental health illnesses. We have a whole manual, the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual, mental health disorders. A lot of the items that are in there could actually be boiled under trauma. And while there are a lot of stressors that we face, a number that are organic, and then some that we experience or develop over the lifetime, a lot of the stressors that we suffer are incredibly exacerbated by the experience of trauma and not getting the effective support to recover from them. I really appreciate, David, you bringing up the isolation that people are experiencing. I think one of the huge challenges that we're suffering is the dissolution of community. We are becoming a lot more isolated, and while there are a lot of benefits that come with technology, it's helping us grow, it's helping our societies evolve and connect in a number of ways. Because it's so new, we haven't learned how to adapt to it in a way that's as effective as it could be, because it's leading us to be isolated granted, that was needed during pandemic. There are going to be more. We have to be able to prepare for that, but we haven't figured out how to support each other and to continue on as a society. And because we are often distracted based on whatever personal traumas we're experiencing and how we're navigating it, it's become really difficult for us to support each other because we're so distracted. What's going on? It's how do I protect myself? How do I make sure I get mine? How do I make sure that my own personal insular community is safe? And oftentimes that results in us attacking other people, when a lot of times they're just trying to figure out how to keep themselves safe too.
So we have a little bit more time for this topic, and I was just wondering, Ulysses and Doc, you both spoke about trauma and that community and family tie, and also what really stuck with me was that trust. how do you all, or what are some of the best practices that you can share with the group tonight of trying to overcome those things so that, so as individuals, we can access the needed resources?
One of the things that I try to relay when I'm asked a question related to trust is that trust must first become a point of self-reflection. I have to be very familiar with who I am as a person and be honest with who I am as a person to recognize whether or not the person that I'm engaging is someone that can really get to know me for the person that I am, and how do their values connect with my values to help me to be better. And trust begins with being able to ask some very challenging questions to a person. Whether that person looks like me or not, it does come with some very challenging questions. The good doctor over here, she might look like me, but she's also a woman. And she have not experienced things that I have experienced as a black man. She is probably significantly, I don't know how much significantly, but significantly younger than I am too. I'm certain that there's a generational difference between us also. And the things that I have seen in the environment, she probably have seen in her environment, because we're both from the South, I understand, but we've seen it from different perspectives and different generations. So when it comes to building trust, it's not always about the person on the other side of you. I think we have to really look at ourselves to see, can I be honest and truthful with myself? And if I want this person to be someone I can trust, can I be that person that they too can trust?
I really appreciate the things that you highlighted in your response. I agree completely with that. To add on to it, I think a lot of it is, one, as you said, knowing yourself, but also knowing when you're not living up to your values and you're not existing and engaging with other people or yourself the way that you want to, because you're not going to be effective that way. In my own experience, like, I have PTSD, and I can often and easily be triggered and start stepping out of my values because I want to surround myself in safety. And even when I trust the other person that I'm talking to, I'm not necessarily communicating in the most effective way because I'm not there, right? So one of the effective strategies is to first notice that for yourself. Try to practice mindfulness, being in the here and now, noticing what I'm feeling, notice my thoughts. It's like, how am I questioning this person? Where is that coming from? Is it because of something that they've done? Is it something that I've done? Am I living in my own integrity? Is there a place where I need to step back? Is there one of the reasons that I might be perceiving that this person may not be trustworthy? There might have been something that I did that prompted them to respond that way. And even in the last place where I worked, that happened quite a bit. When I started experiencing that burnout, it was really hard for me to stay regulated when I came back to work after being on leave for a while. And so I needed to pace myself, take time, step away, ground, and oftentimes even reapproach and say, hey, I know that I wasn't in my best place. Did anything happen that we should readdress? And you know what? Or I'm already aware, you know what? The way that I approached you when I had this concern, that wasn't the most effective thing. I would really like to be a better teammate. I apologize. Is there anything that I missed? How can we repair so that we can both redevelop that trust? And then it's also then me taking more time to step back and it's like, okay, can I move forward from that place and maintain trust that I can be an effective community member? Because we're also noting a lot is that people are experiencing a lot of shame and guilt, remorse from what they've done, and then they completely isolate because they don't trust themselves to be in community anymore, or they don't trust the other community members to be able to trust them again, so they don't want to make that attempt. But that's not going to happen if we don't make those efforts to do so.
Thank you all so much. That is wonderful. So we'll move to our next question. How is racism, bias, cultural understanding impacting your experience with behavioral health care as professionals? Don't talk all at once.
I try not to be the first person to speak all the time. So this is one of my favorite topics to talk about when it comes to cultural. I struggle with the term cultural competencies because competency relates to a skill that you have, not only to know what to do, but what not to do. I tend to favor the terminology of cultural humility, which allows you to be your true self, be appreciated for who you truly are, everything that you are, and that gives you in turn the ability to appreciate other people for who and everything that they are as well. When it comes to racism, bigotry, and cultural misunderstanding and behavioral health, there is, in many academic sectors, there is limited cultural training within many schools of behavioral health that focus on the different cultures of people and the realities that those people face growing up and what they have been taught by their families about experiences that they've had. There are many things that we as African Americans did not experience ourselves, but the history remains with us because we know it, because it's so close to us. And there's a lot of things that is relevant to us that we bring with us so that when we see someone who don't look like us, we look at them odd and say, where are you really at in this thing? Are you someone that see a black man, or do you see a human being in need of the services that you provide? One of the things that I teach leaders is that if you want to be effective, you got to be able to appreciate what makes a person completely who they are. And you have to be able to engage them where they are and see where their values and your values connect and where you can build from there. I think the problem in many behavioral health settings, especially in a state like Washington that is quite challenging, is that the number of BIPOC behavioral health providers is very small. And the number of those that are Caucasian is very large, a very big number. And a good number of them do not have no identity or no reference to what it is like or what black people, even the state of Washington, have dealt with. They're not looking at your past, they're not looking at your experiences, they're not looking at your upbringing. They're primarily focusing their attention on you have depression, you have anxiety, you have bipolar disorder, you have these different things. However, they're not looking at always the root cause of that. They do not know what causes you trauma and give you a moment of PTSD. They don't understand why you cannot accept them for who they are, not recognizing that they're not accepting you for who you are also. They look at the world through a lens that we do not always see through because we are just not getting our voices. We just not becoming very aware that we have these resources and the ability to reach out to these resources and get the support and help. And even in that, we're very conscientious because we want to ensure that the person that's there to give us that support is really looking at a human being and not something that they have some biases against or stereotypes that guide their thought processes or ideologies that does not reflect the person that I am, that they think that I am. I'm reminded some time ago when a law enforcement officer pulled me over and he said, well, I bet your rap sheet is very long. I'm like, why don't you take a look at that and tell me what it looked like? And, he said, I don't find nothing on you. I said, and you won't find nothing on me. I said, I've never smoked a day in my life. I never drank alcohol a day in my life. I never used drugs a day in my life. I've never been in handcuffs. I've never been behind a jail cell except to visit somebody else. I never had those things. He said, dude, if it wasn't for your black skin, I think you were white. Oh, really? But people are like that. Even in a profession where people's mindset, mental stability, and physical and mental resiliency can be challenged by ideologies just like that. And we have to navigate that. The one thing that I learned in my job as a nurse, as a counselor, and in every role that I played in this world and in my life, sometimes we have to be in a position where we're willing to heal hurts we did not cause. And if we're not willing to help heal hurts that we did not cause, why are we in the profession, especially behavioral health profession?
I can go ahead and tell you that I'm going to need to be redirected because this might not completely actually just answer the whole question. So I wanted to stem from what you shared with us, and especially about the moment where you got pulled over. Forgive me. They see you rolling, they hating. Basically, they trying to catch you riding dirty. It's a song for a reason. One of the things about how I present and what assumptions made about my journey with some of the things that I've even shared so far is because a lot of assumptions are made, right? You were able to challenge the officer by referring to your rap sheet and noting that they wouldn't be able to find anything. Never had anything on you, never been arrested. I've never had anything on me either, but I got a rap sheet because I was arrested anyway. Not going to go into the history because we'll be here all night. But that incident, that experience where, actually I will go ahead and say, I have no doubt that there was an intentional strategy in place to plant substances in the place where I legally worked hard. There was an intentional effort to lie and make up narratives about people who worked in a legal place where a lot of people worked hard. And I really hope if you haven't yet, watching the documentary 13th. It is an incredible film, and it speaks the truth about how the process of enslavement has changed in this country. It's an intentional effort. And now that a lot of people and our ancestors have done the work to try to change the way our society functions, too many people are aware, and so they're trying to change it again and trying to erase the history of what's happened and preventing us from sharing it so that we can't pivot. Because one thing they know about our community is that we are good at pivoting. But guess what? We're going to keep being good at it because that's what we do. And they keep challenging us to do better, so. But all of that significantly influenced my experience in how I navigate the behavioral health community, how I navigate behavioral health care, one for myself, but also how I function as a clinician, where I was one of those people who's like, often because I was blamed for a lot of things as I was growing up, dark-skinned, brown, female, where I became a people pleaser. I was like, follow the rules, do what you're supposed to do. And I tried to do it to my best effort, but then you get in trouble anyway. Like, what else do you want me to do? I'm going to grad school, get my doctorate in psychology. Oh yes, that happened while I was in grad school getting my doctorate in psychology. I was working over 80 hours a week. But there's only so much you can do. So one of the processes they have for the way that we treat our patients or our clients is a lot of it is one-on-one work. But as Ulysses mentioned, that there's only so many of us. There aren't enough of us to provide the care that's so desperately needed because a lot of people are working very hard to make sure we're not successful. And so that's why community is so desperately needed. And as Elizabeth, you mentioned your work as a teacher. It's so important for us to all embrace that community duty to not just focus on what our immediate needs are for ourselves, but our communities, and making sure that we're developing and sharing resources, because that's the only way that it's going to be done. So one, learning as much as you can about what you need, but also making sure you're passing that on and taking that change in the way that we all approach healthcare, behavioral healthcare, physical healthcare, all of it. Not just what do we need, what do we all need?
Well, I get to follow that, both of y'all. Okay, so, so I mean, this is literally what I actually get to do. Is in my agency help with bias, racism, and cultural misunderstandings. But I will get to say in my actual work with client populations, one thing that I have learned is to have a lot of curiosity, especially in community-based mental health. You see so many different types of ethnicities, religions, and backgrounds, and Sound is a very large agency across King County. We have 14 locations that are just outpatient and 3 residential, and I've worked out of a few different locations. One of the things that I know I have seen is oftentimes when I've talked with other people is clients of color that have complex needs, like usually it's complex diagnoses, schizophrenia, psychosis, multiple hospitalizations, and they're dealing with systems-based issues and identity issues. They're labeled as complex and difficult, and then they try to transfer them off my caseload. And they're usually asking to stay with me because I'm a person of color. But they're like, oh, well, Elizabeth, you have another role too. And I'm like, why do they need to be transferred off? And sometimes it's because they said, well, they're complex and difficult. This is everyday life for them. Why is that complex and difficult? Understanding this is everyday life for majority of people. Dealing with the diagnoses, racism, and systems issues is normal life. So that is something that sometimes is hard for people to understand, is that is everyday life for most people. And that is just sometimes really difficult for people to grasp. The other thing is I see that sometimes clients are just passed off to the easiest solution for the clinician to understand. One thing that I saw is we had someone come in crisis when I was working in the crisis department, and she didn't speak. We were told she knew sign language. When I came in, I tried ASL with her. She didn't sign ASL. We found out when I really took the time with her, I spent extra time with her, that she knew Ethiopian Sign Language and never learned ASL in the United States. I was told just refer her to the Deaf Services Department. Well, Deaf Services only signs ASL. And that would have just passed her off without a solution to get care that was adequate. So I continued to meet with her while she was in crisis, and then by taking that time, I learned she also had an inaccurate diagnosis because they wrote down that she was hearing voices. The voices were actually religion. It was her practice of religion. By taking the time to write back and forth with her over several weeks of meeting, I was able to learn cultural things and spending time with her. But I took the time to write with her. Every time, making my session time with her an extra hour rather than a half-hour check-in. That way I could make sure I accurately spent the time with her, so if she got transferred, she'd have an accurate diagnosis. Because oftentimes we do a 120-minute intake and then we move someone on, and that's how we give a diagnosis, because that's what Medicaid, Medicare tells us to do. But if we take the time, we can give accurate information, because once you put a diagnosis on someone, it follows them. And people don't realize that. And with crisis clients, when we give them a diagnosis, I used to do detainments. I have been subpoenaed to testify in court over 25 times in the last few years and testified to detain people against their will in ITA court. That's what I did. I go out, assess, and hospitalize people. But once I give someone that label, they're going in, their rights are taken away. It's a very serious thing to do. And oftentimes people were labeled, and I'm like, why are we putting them? We should do the less restrictive option. Going into the hospital is not the best option for people. It's traumatizing and it's detrimental. Once you take away that right, they could lose their housing because they're in for more than 30 days. They could lose their job. Why can't we find a solution? Do they have a relative they can stay with? Can I safety plan with them? Did you ask any of these questions? We could find another solution. And so that's what my job was, is to see, can we find another solution? Hospitalization is not always the best solution. But sometimes people are so quick because they're a person of color and they've had this before, we're just going to hospitalize. But it doesn't always mean it's the right solution. And so that was something I did, was figuring out, no, this is not the best solution. Oftentimes I see people just repeat hospitalizations and we could have found other options. And so my job was finding more resources. Nope, that wasn't a good option. Actually, they didn't want to talk to you because they felt like you weren't going to listen to them because you were a white social worker. They just needed to talk to a different person because they had been hospitalized this many times, or they felt like you were dismissive, or they tried to say something but it came off this way, so maybe approach the question in a different way. It's just sometimes simple things. It could be just ask the question a different way, or they asked that you give them some water before you ask the question. Sometimes it's something simple. Give them a cup of coffee. They're homeless. Give them a sandwich, and then go and assess them. It could be something simple that shows kindness. So those were the things that I've seen a lot in my work. But then the other things I know I've seen that I've experienced is that me being disabled meant I was incapable of doing crisis. And for me, I've been doing crisis for over 10 years. Me being in a chair does not mean my brain is not capable of doing crisis. And neither does, I've had my dog with me for 10 years. My dog, I worked with Eastern state clients and Western state clients, and they have flipped out, stuff's been thrown at my dog. My dog will literally just lay right there. She will not move. She is not going to attack anyone. That is what I've done for years. Seeing clients inpatient, outpatient, my dog will not mess with the client. It does not affect my ability to do mental health work. But that was an assumption. My capability is based off of me being disabled. And it's only because it's visible, otherwise you wouldn't know.
David, would you like to add to that?
Sure. I was coming from the client perspective. I've encountered two situations. I have a friend that's homeless, gay, and HIV positive, and they would assume when he'd go to meet with someone that there was something wrong with him just because of who he is. And so he found himself always not being listened to and not able to explain all that's going on with him. My other situation, in my time at NAMI, we had a woman whose son was in the criminal justice system. And I learned two things. One, when I was in D.C., that when you are arrested, you lose access to Medicare and those kinds of benefits for just being arrested until you are proven guilty. So imagine someone needing assistance. This woman in particular, her son was in the criminal justice system and the it's not special needs court, the mental health court system, but he also threatened members. And so we spent a lot of time trying to find assistance for her that he could be heard. And the best answer we got was in 2026, there will be a facility in DC, in Vancouver that he can go to. But in the meantime, he's in a jail system without access to his Medicare. We were able to help him get that. But just the sense of isolation of the mother, not knowing how to work the system, not knowing what to do and feeling like my child is just going to be lost. And so for me, those are incidents where racism shows up. I'm going to be gentle on this, but like we as a people have experienced some trauma in the last few weeks because of what's happening in this country. And I don't want to be silent about it, but I also want to say for all of us that we process it differently. But people have looked at us and still look at us and say we're not deserving of basic rights in this country. And I just share this. I grew up in a town, if you know this town, Cairo, Illinois. It was the most racially divided town in all of the United States. And when I was 12 years old, I would go to the bookstore and buy me magazines. I loved Rail magazines. And so this owner followed me down the street and said, "I know you stole something." It's like, I did not steal anything. Here's my receipt. I don't believe you. You threw something in the bush. And literally called the cops on me. And I was so lucky that sometimes when you cross lines, there was a white cop who saw them hold me, and he's like, "What are you doing with him?" And they're like, "Well, he stole something." And he said, do you have proof of that? And it's like, "No, we don't. We just know he stole something." And the reason I tell this is because that affected me the rest of my life. The rest of the time I saw a cop, I did not trust cops, right? And so those are the biases I think that we experience. And in behavioral health, I just really worry that our people will always be the misdiagnosed by certain folks, or the folks that will just be dismissed no matter what.
And I just want to make a quick comment about, David, you bringing up the criminal justice system. Just want to put a point that a lot of the time people who end up involved in the criminal justice system, it's because they're trying to get basic needs met. Whether that be their physical needs, housing, shelter, nutritional needs, but also because struggling getting mental health needs met, or issues with grounding their systems and finding effective ways to get those needs met. Once we're desperate for something, it's hard to ground and problem solve effectively. Then we start to reach out. Okay, we get impulsive. Okay, what's going to meet that need, even if only for a moment? As we all know, or at this point, because it's becoming more well known, that a lot of people in the United States prison system is because of substance use. Even though that a lot of the substances are now becoming not necessarily legalized, but they're becoming decriminalized. But there's still a lot of people who are still in the justice system because of that. Then what happens when you're in the criminal justice system? If you're imprisoned, you're isolated, you don't have mental stimulation, your brain actually starts to atrophy. If you're not engaged, that will happen regardless of who the person is. That's one of the reasons, like with Alzheimer's, you can usually kind of stave off, or the progression is slower when you're practicing learning things on a regular basis. So if you're in an environment where you're not engaged and you're not stimulated, your brain will collapse. And then what happens? We're in an environment where we take a lot of punitive measures to stop behaviors they don't want instead of a supportive one. And then that results in the problems progressing because you've been isolated, and then you're released out into the community like nothing ever happened. Oh, except for you don't have your rights anymore. You don't have access to the resources or the support that you would have had if you hadn't gotten arrested in the first place. Good luck to you. And traumatized on top of that. So going back to where we were talking about how to navigate it, we have to reshift into communities of support. What we've known in communities of color, not just Black communities, but a lot of communities of color, we always knew that it's about supporting each other and everybody in the community. It's just effective.
That is a great transition into our next question, dealing with those, seeing what helps. seeing what helps. That community is one of the biggest things that that affects us as individuals. Knowing that we have someone to fall on, knowing that we have someone that will lift us up, knowing we have someone that will support us. So thank you for that. Our next question. So you can answer this from a personal perspective for yourself, or as a provider, and what you see for the people that you serve. But we'd like to know, what have you seen that really helps heal? What's helped heal you? Because you all have been really open with us about the trauma that you have been through as individuals, whether it is in personal life or in your professional life. But we also want to know what are those steps you've taken, or what are those tools you've used really to help heal yourself, or what's been helping to heal the people that you serve?
So you're not starting. No, you're okay. How about I'll answer from both perspectives. As an individual, actually becoming a provider is one thing that helped me heal, because schooling was so helpful for me. It helped me learn a lot, but I also never saw someone that looked like me. So I never had a provider that looked like me. But I also, once I became a provider, I used to like grill my clinicians. I'd be like, so I found all this on you, so can you tell me? And I started wanting to know about my clinicians to make sure they were good fits. And so it helped me be really good about saying, is this person going to be useful for me, and good about challenging me to know if they would be a good fit for me as a person as I was working through things. So I would like literally come with questions for my provider, and they're like, you looked me up. I was like, yes, I did. I looked you up. So it was a good thing for me. But I think also what helped too has been just different types of community, and different types of spaces, but being just involved in all of those spaces, and in different ways. And then I would also say, of course, my dog. I never would have thought to have a service dog. It was a huge stigma at the time, especially in Black communities and communities of color. Having a service dog is not a thing. I've never met another person of color with a service dog. I will tell you right now, it's never a thing. And it was a really big deal when I got one. And there was a really big impact on me when I got one. The community and church I went to actually would not let me return to the church because of having a service dog. And it was a really big deal. And so that's part of why it was a huge thing for me to finally decide to do it. It was 5 years before I actually said yes to getting a dog, and it had been continuously recommended to me by my care team, but I was not ready for it. But it has been the biggest thing that was healing, because my provider said, if you train the dog, it will help you heal and use your skills. She said, you have the skills to do it. And I was like, what? Like, no. But she used to train dogs. And so she told me exactly what I needed, and she said, you can do it. And it was. So I always say she saved me and I saved her, because she was a rescue. And it was. It actually did a lot for me. As a provider, I'm one who does not use one typical approach to care. I'm very much an integrative approach. So that means using different methodologies that work for the client. I believe giving the client a sense of choice and say is very important, whether that's with youth or adults, and including the family. I believe it's very important. So a lot of the clients I've worked with have been individuals of color. Some have had guardianship. Some have had adults involved. I think the important thing is maybe not doing traditional sessions. So some of my clients sitting across in a session, like you see on TV with a couch, does not work. Especially if you're doing community behavioral health, they're gonna be like, yeah, fuck you, I ain't coming back. Like, for real, I've had a client who literally sat there and was like, I don't need your help. Why the hell am I here? And she cussed me out. Tell me why a week later she called me. She's like, can I come see you? I can't get rid of her now. I can't get rid of any of my clients. And she's been seeing me for 5 years. But that's the thing, though. How I started was through walking outside with a lot of my clients. We were walking, and we just talked about disclosure. We're in spaces. I can't maintain confidentiality. This is what this will mean. But that was what worked. Some of it was using games as we talked. coloring as we so using non-traditional methods sometimes is how you break down walls, because some people, traditional counseling does not work well. And so you have to start where the person is at and then build to where it is. And now some of my clients come in, if you saw my office, all my office has their graffiti empowerment artwork. I have fidget pillows, baskets of fidget toys, coloring sheets everywhere, because people should be able to come in, and the purpose is because color, what that embraces for the body. They can sit on the couch, they can sit in a chair, they can come in, they know they can instantly color, they know they can come in and pick up fidget toys. There's a reason my office is set up the way it is, so that when they come in, they're gonna feel comfortable. When I worked crisis, it was light colors, light blue, mellow colors. And so every setting is for a reason, because it helps when you're working through things, especially difficult things. So that's part of how I know it's worked for my clients, because some of them were like, I'm not coming in. The hardest thing is coming in the door.
I, of course, very much believe in peer support. And I have to tell you, I think about my great-grandmother, and she was a member of what's called First Century Missionary Baptist Church. And they had this group called the Royal Club. And the kids, we would go, and then they would give us food, and the women would get together and talk about what they were going through. And that has been a tradition in our community, that we've had these circles and ways that we have gathered to support one another. I actually have a group of men that I go to brunch with once a month. And when we think through what we're going through, it is about work and what comes out of that. And so I believe those social circles are very important for us to continue. And I also know now, at 64, people don't go to church like they used to in the black community. And so we still have to create circles and ways for people to gather and support one another. There was a study at NAMI that said 43% of the hospital rate for folks who went to peer support was reduced by 43% by our peer groups. And so I will say they're meeting over there right now, that NAMI is a good resource. So is NAMI King County, South King County, NAMI Seattle. They actually do cross work from different groups, and so that's definitely a model to use. But I think we also need to be creating innovative new models as well.
Doc, gonna bring it up the back, huh? Good. So when I look at this question, the first thing I think about is what helped me. And I think the biggest, most influential thing that helped me is coming to a knowledge that I have to take ownership and responsibility for myself and my health and my behavioral health. And being able to take ownership of it and responsibility for it, it makes me more aware of what resources I need and how to make sure that the person that I'm relying on to help me get those resources is aligned with me to ensure I'm getting what I need from them. It can be quite challenging, but I do take good care of myself, and I do a lot of self-care. One of the things I do go into those that strong phase of depression, and one of the things that get me out of it is I can walk for 13 miles in 3 hours, and that helps get everything out of my head. One of the most beautiful things during COVID was that I can walk around with a mask on my face and talk to myself, and nobody ever knew it because they never see my lips moving. So it's a very good thing. And sometimes the best conversation that I can have is when I say, Ulysses, what in the devil are you thinking? I don't know. And I know a lot of psychologists tell you that it's okay to talk to yourself, but don't answer yourself. Well, I do both. So it's really about ownership of my own care first. And as I mentioned earlier, being self-aware and being able to be honest with yourself about what you need. When it comes to other people, I like what Elizabeth, I think, right? Mm-hmm. Elizabeth said. When I was doing counseling care, I always met my clients where they were. I wanted them to be as comfortable as they could be. And we did walks sometime. I'm like, you want to walk? You got the right one because I can walk. Good. But one of the other things that I thought was very, very useful in a setting was to get them to work together with me is puzzles that I would use. And the puzzle, the goal was we're going to build trust, interaction, and collaborate together, conversating as we put this puzzle together. And our conversation does not end until the puzzle is complete. And I told them if we did things, I said, the first thing I noticed about us is that we got different processes as to how we want to do our part of the puzzle. I'm trying to get all the straight lines, and you're trying to get all the colors. That shows that we got different perspectives, but at the same time, we got the same goal. And in this puzzle, the goal is for me to provide you with the tools and resources you need to help you get better. However, you can also be beneficial in helping me to look out for myself as I look out for you. And a lot of times we fail to realize that the people that we help, we're helping ourselves with that as well. Because we still have some deep-seated things that are going on. The best thing for a counselor to be able to do is to have a counselor. People don't always believe that, but it's true. Because sometimes you take on the weight of your clients and the weight of life that you're navigating, and you need someone that you can turn to and talk to yourself. So the best thing for a counselor is to have a counselor, or a therapist is to have a therapist. But I think the biggest thing for taking care of myself is owning myself, owning the responsibility to get the care I want. And when it comes to helping people, don't tell them what to do, but give them the tools to help them figure it out for themselves.
Yes. That's it. Yes. I guess okay, kidding aside. No, that wasn't kidding. I was very serious. I don't have much to add to any of that. I'll just go through a couple of my notes because my brain is getting tired. Elizabeth, you mentioned talking about sometimes stepping out of traditional therapy. What we consider traditional therapy, that's very new. Everything that you talked about you do with people, that's traditional. Thank you for also bringing that up. So, no, a lot of the ways.
Will you repeat what she said so everybody can hear?
I just said that, nowadays people say I do DBT only, CBT only, and I'm like, I don't understand that. Why only one methodology? In schools, we learn multiple methodologies for a reason so that we can use what works best for the individual we're working with. Individualized, client-centered care.
That's true. Also depends on where you were trained, because there are some programs that only teach one way and not necessarily to do it that way. But I even want to go further. What I meant was all the practices that you incorporate into the work that you do, going outside, making sure you're connecting to the person where they are, not necessarily sitting in the room across from them, the different ways of supporting a person, that's traditional. The way that we engage with people in community, it's very new to say, we have to go sit by ourselves in this little room with the white walls and these two chairs facing each other. There's nothing natural or normal about that. It's a very contrived situation. And there are places, and a lot of places where it can be effective. What we're often forgetting is the importance of what we were doing before that. We can't replace it with the other. Do we need to add this? Can it be helpful? But making sure you're incorporating all those pieces that all three of you have mentioned too. And if we're losing that, that's doing more damage than what you're trying to add. And even that goes with the part about counselor. This can be a very sticky topic, but with that, how much trouble do I want to get in today?
Let's get in all that
Thank you
good
so
trouble.
much. Somebody said a lot. But the thing with the counselor, I think being very aware of the benefits and the risks of what you're doing with individuals and community is critically important when you're engaging. That kind of education is paramount. You don't always have to get that in a classroom. Sorry, that's a development of capitalism. And we have to be very aware of that. One of the reasons we're not meeting the need is because we're saying that there's only a certain type of person who can do this. A person who went through this process that was approved by somebody who's not from your community, hasn't been through what you've been through, and has no background in how pivotal the actual traditional practices that you were talking about have been, and dismiss it on a regular basis and now on a systemic level. Again, not saying it can't be helpful. In a lot of cases it is. There are places that we can add on, and we need to increase access to make sure as many people have that as possible when it's needed. So, and actually the bottom line with this is, we all have, in every society, there are various smaller communities. We all have a piece of the puzzle that will be effective for our overall healing. We can't pretend that just one person has it or the other. Our communities have a way of doing it because we've been doing it for millennia. Not weeks, not years, not decades, not centuries, millennia. So let that resonate for a second. That means something. There are communities that have a lot of developments and effective treatments that they've been able to create based on what a lot of communities have been doing for millennia. There's a great add-on to that, though. When you do the evidence-based research, when you do the research to make sure it's effective, that actually helps us figure out which components of it are effective. And we can learn from that. Which piece do we need to make sure we have? How can we do this more consistently? That makes it overall more effective. So it's about putting all those pieces together, but doing that while not forgetting where some of these things came from. Because a lot of the things that you're being sold, they've existed for millennia. And they're easier to access and oftentimes free. But as you said, that we highly benefit from having guidance about what those things are, what those effective strategies are, and how to use them. And the last point that I made was, one about, I do believe in us developing our own independence to be aware of what our needs are, to make our best efforts to be able to meet our needs as we can, but we have to balance that with the interdependence. That means also having the expectation that we have to teach each other how to do each of these things, because most of the time we don't learn it on our own. That doesn't happen. We're social creatures. We need to live in community and learn from each other. And then the last thing, just repeating what everyone has said about meeting people where they are, what I wrote was just like so one of the things that as I learned to get over my ego, I just wrote, how do we support people living to their own best potential, not ours? So not saying, okay, this worked for me. This is what I'm working. This is what I think is the most effective. This is what you need to do. I don't know what you need to do because I don't know you that well. Let's share together, and I'll see how I can support you living to your best potential. We can only do that by you giving me the information of what that is and me supporting you along the way, or helping you see what you can't. And then you also giving me the feedback of how I'm not supporting you as effectively as I can, so I can make those adjustments.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say similarly to that, I think also the thing is helping individuals and their families know that care is not always linear. Yes. And the progress is not linear. That's what that made me think of, because I think sometimes families are like, they're not making progress. They're not making progress, or they don't look like they're getting better. Well, to understand that what is getting better and how you define it may not be what it looks like. It may not always look linear, but healing is happening in a different way for them because we as counselors see the whole thing and maybe you are only seeing one component. And to know that I'm working with them over a period of time and I am seeing a different part. And so that healing may be happening in a different way, or we're working on a different aspect at this moment. And sometimes really helping families and others know that your definition of progress is not the definition we are working on. The definition of progress we're working on is the client's goal, is the individual's goal. And that's what we're working on. So ask them, what is their goal? What are you wanting to work on? Find out what they want to work on. Because I think sometimes that gets lost in translation. And it becomes, well, my goal is that they do that. Good for you, but we want to make sure we understand what is their goal and let that not get lost.
Thank you so much. So we are getting close to the hour, and we do still want to leave some time for question and answers. So my panelists, you know we all can talk about this all day long, all next week, all year long. But we just need to be mindful of our time on this question. And this is not the easiest question to be mindful of time on, so I do recognize that. But what does culturally relevant care look and feel like?
So this is what culturally relevant care looked like to me when I engaged any client that I had in times past, but especially a client that does not look exactly like me. I first put down everything that suggests that this is a therapy session and put it aside. And I look at that person, whether they look like me or not, and say, what I want to do first and foremost is make sure you understand that I'm here to support you. What it means culturally, if I look at someone that is a woman or somebody that is not my race or from a different nationality that might look like me, I make sure they understand that my purpose is to be here to support you. And if at any time I do not feel or you do not feel that I'm taking your best interest to heart, I will take responsibility and refer you to someone who can better understand who you are and what you need better than I am. Culturally competent care begins with being aware of yourself, your limitations, what you can do and what you cannot do, and also paying attention to the person that you're trying to provide services to, and know when to refer them to someone that can get to them better than you can.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that you have said. I know for me, I let the client teach me along the way. And then as I learn things, I try to show that I'm learning things in a sense. And what I mean by that is, for example, like if I find out my client is a specific religion, as I know those holidays come up and that's something that's exciting to them, I, will say happy, like Diwali. And I let them know that I'm recognizing that. And I let them share it with me. Like I have a client who always sends me pictures every holiday that comes up. She will text them to my work cell when she's at the temple. And I let her share that excitement with me. And at one point she literally thought I was Hindu. And I was like, no, but I was like, it's very cool. And, and she was like, I didn't know this whole time you learned and I was like, yes, because it's significant to you. And so taking the time to show that significance and understand it is important to how she does her sessions and gets her care. So that's something that I take the time to do for any of my clients, is to understand those things and to comprehend them as best as I can and ask questions.
I'll leave that to the providers.
I was just going to say yes.
Okay.
Well, David, working in the nonprofit sector and just being a self-advocate, how do you feel? How do you feel relevant care looks for you and the community that you serve? Even in your ministerial capacity.
I think, one, it definitely has to resonate with people, that you understand where they're coming from, that you may not have all the resources, but you will do your best to help them connect with resources. As a person of faith, I know it's very important, the power of prayer, and I also believe the power of thought to have an impact for folks, and that we have to, make sure that we get folks where they need and can get the services that they are seeking. I think finally I would just, as a nonprofit work, again, what I've experienced, there's Tacoma Recovery House, of course there's NAMI here in Pierce County, and there's a variety of groups in Pierce County that are very helpful for folks, and making sure, one of the things I certainly was focused on is how do we make sure there are people who look like us providing those services, even as volunteers.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So we are going to move right into the Q&A section of this wonderful talk. So do we have cards? Pre-written cards?
We do not have pre-written
Okay.
cards.
No worries. No worries. I'm sorry.
Can we do comments?
We get comments or questions. Absolutely. We will pass the mic around. I'm going to give them this one. Yeah. It was just easier while they were talking. All right. Just raise your hand.
Hello, my name's Ethel, and I attend TACID rigorously. For me, I wanted to come because I didn't know what this was going to be about. But when I seen at least Black, I wanted to come hear what it was about. Then mental health, definitely, because in my community and where I was raised, once I wasn't raised in a house that we went to church. I was raised in a house that we were believers, and you best believe I am a believer. And in where I lived, it was a fact that as a Black woman or a Black child, you don't have any issues. You pick up your big girl panties and you go on, you get through it. And then 39 years in the military, it wasn't no, I got mental issues. Pick up your big girl panties, get that weapon, and go on and do what you got to do. Ain't nobody playing with you right now. And then the stigma. If I tell you I'm having mental issues, guess what? I might get put out. So I've always had to just take whatever it is and figure out how to go. You know, my mother, she raised me to be strong. Not strong that I got to be powerful and look at me to roar. To just be able to have that intestinal fortitude to take care of myself, to understand myself, to be able to work through my problems and my issues, right? So I just wanted to just tell y'all a little bit, listening to your stories and listening to how you navigated through. Why are you looking at me like I'm talking too much? Navigate through you've helped me a lot, because when you ask the question, well, what did you do for yourself? By the end of my military career and the end of my Department of Defense career, they were on me like so bad that I had some thoughts of ending myself. And I had to say, nah, not you, chick. You're not going to do that. You're not going to give them the pleasure of that, right? So coming to TACID, going to getting a mental health counselor through the VA, going to meditation, all these things helped me make it through the last 3 years, make it through my journey, and I'm powerful now. I have so much love for me that I say it's about me, myself, and I. It's about my happiness, it's all about me, and I don't do it selfishly, because I need people to know either you're going to come to me correct, you're going to come to me with a positive attitude, a positive view, or we don't need to be. I've gotten rid of so many people in my life because I need peace, my joy, my harmony. That's all I ask. I'm not asking you for $1 million. I'm asking you to just listen sometimes, and can't even get that. That's another thing. When people just listen, I just want to tell you one quick thing. Just listen to me for a second and help me guide my thoughts into a place that I can not only be better for me, but be better for you too. So I appreciate all you guys being here, because you've helped me again, because I'm always trying to learn. I listen to learn. I don't listen to talk, although I am a talker. TACID helped me do that. But I listen to learn, and I've learned so much of the guidance that you've given, the information, the output that you've given. So I appreciate you all, and thank you for being here.
Next.
Good evening. Julie Wiegand is my name. I'm a program manager at CMAR, Behavioral Health, and want to let you know why I'm here tonight. I come from a very mixed family, and I have seen everything that you're talking about, even in my own children. So what can we, because it takes more than just the BIPOC community to be able to resolve some of these issues. We'll never be able to resolve them all probably in any of our lifetimes. So what can we all do together to try to reach some resolutions, to try to make things better? How can we all work together to get more therapists of more diversity, of, not just certain races, but different ethnicities? And what can we all do to try to get more therapists other than the ones that look like me? My grandkids, my kids, and we've tried to find therapists that look like them. And fortunately, we got lucky. But the vast majority of community is not getting that lucky.
Push the button up. Yeah.
Hello? Okay.
There you go.
So I think there's a couple things. One, we have a bunch of resources here. So, and of those resources, I think just helping us get more people to put themselves on the resource lists. So some of those lists are helping get providers on the list that are already providers of color. So getting more people to put themselves into the directories is helpful. So then people can access the providers that we do have. My thinking in terms of getting more people is just how do you recruit? As someone who is at CMAR, you have the ability to recruit, change your practices, and to push those practices up to your HR. I'm in HR, so what I can do is think about, are our job descriptions written well? How do we recruit peer counselors? How do we make sure that we're recruiting at the right places to reach BIPOC populations? And then are we doing so in strategic ways? Then are we removing the barriers for people to get clinical hours to be able to be clinicians in the first place? So if we're putting up the barriers when they get there, what's the point of getting them there in the first place? So making sure we can be a part of finding solutions to remove barriers. So do you have enough supervisors to make sure that they can get their clinical hours while they're there? Otherwise, they're just going to leave. Are they getting enough support? Majority of clinicians of color don't have enough support to survive there, and that's the typical reason people leave agencies. They're not getting enough support while they're there, so they're unhappy and they leave. Or they get their hours and they leave. One thing is the Washington Development Initiative, which is the WDI workforce that's allowing people to get a part of that. If you're not a part of that, become a part of that. That gets clinicians of color back into school. That gets you them there, then 6 years committed to a community behavioral health agency. That then commits you to helping them get credentialed hours. So that's a way to get more clinicians of color. Thinking about grants and programs that help us reach people at a younger age, like SOUND. We just did a program, Career Pathway, to reach high schoolers, juniors and seniors interested in the field earlier so that we can meet the behavioral workforce shortage. And we did underrepresented populations. Programs like that, initiatives that can start reaching people that are interested now. We're going to follow up in a year to see where they're at, if they started school. And we also gave them opportunities of how they could start getting into behavioral workforce now, once they hit 18. So things like that, that's going to get people to stay in the field because they need the support early enough to consistently stay. Because I think about myself, if it weren't for the fact that I had people who invested in me, and those were people who weren't people of color, who told me, you're going to go back to school, you're going to do this, I would not have gotten where I am. I had one mentor of color who had a PhD, Dr. Burnley, who told me my freshman year of college after my dad died, you're going to get a doctorate, Elizabeth. You're too smart to not get a doctorate. I said, I haven't even finished my freshman year. I said, you've lost your mind. He asked me 2 days ago, Elizabeth, when are you starting your doctorates? I said, I haven't even thought about it yet. He said, start thinking about it. You finished your master's, so I'm waiting for the doctorates. And he knows I'm going to go back to school. But every year since, he's known me for over 10 years, he's told me, you're going to get your doctorate. He's the only person of color I knew at the time who's had doctorates. I had never met someone who's a person of color that had had that high level degree. My parents didn't. So things like that, that's going to let people know education is achievable. And even then, I've hit barriers with credentialing. I got my degree, got all of that stuff, and then I've had someone prevent me from getting clinical hours. So imagine if people are hitting barriers like that all the time, what's going to happen? So it's like you got to help figure out how do you remove those barriers. So then people feel like there is a chance for success. Does that make sense? Yeah, and I knew. Yeah, and I know what we did is like Sound, we changed our recruitment strategy. So we looked at we reached out to programs, we looked for diversity fairs. We hit the programs that were diverse. We hit every MSW program. We made new relationships with every master's program, and we tried different types of programs. I mean, we changed how we recruited, which is how we doubled our DEI numbers in a year. We went from 22% to 46%. From changing how we recruited and then changing the way we wrote our applications so that more people could apply. And a lot of times it's how it's written. People don't realize and then they think they're not qualified. And so you have to be really aware of the wording of your application. So things like that, reviewing that. Allowing people for peer, and then what we did is we changed it so under our union, people had the opportunity to go back to school. So our union has a BEAM program that funds so people can go back to school. So then that got people more in the door because then after 90 days, then 1 year, they could access our funding and go back to school. It would help pay for them to go back to school. So opportunity to move up and get a BA or an MSW.
I think what Elizabeth said is spot on. I just want to add that I think we try to look for solutions to things of the past. We don't have solution. We never should be looking for solution at this point in stage. I think we should use those past experiences as a building block to become better and to do better. In addition to what Elizabeth said, I think that when you get a person in the door that is of color in the facility and you want them there, treat them like they supposed to be there. Allow them to be a part of it and give them ownership of what's taking place in there. And what I would suggest to you before you go through this extraordinary process that Elizabeth just outlined, make sure the people that are working with you have the same mindset and values that you have and the intentionality that you're expressing to have more diversification in your organization. Because if you bring somebody in and they don't feel like they are there because you want them there, they're not going to stay. And if you really want them there, do that. I was talking, one of my other students invited me to come to their agency to work, and when I walked in, you look at the wall, there's nothing but beautiful black women all over the wall. Everybody that worked there when I walked in was either black or biracially black somehow. And most of their clients were black women. And I was there to talk about cultural competency and humility. And I told her, I said, so do you see many men? For some reason, men don't want to come see us. Do you see people that are not black? No, for some reason, they don't want to come in here either. I said, just an observation. Just an observation. When I walked into this room, into your business establishment, I didn't feel like I belonged here. Well, how can you not feel like you belong here? You are a guest. I said, but when I walk in, I did not see anything that reflect even the resemblance of me except for my skin color. How do you expect to draw people in when what you see when you walk in reflect only one thing? So my point is, when you want the people of color and you want to get more people of diverse personalities to be a part of your organization, have those things in place that make them feel a part of the family of that organization and not somebody that just happened to be tolerated. Because I always hated the thing about toleration, because you tolerate flies and bees and mosquitoes at a barbecue. You don't tolerate humans. You appreciate and accept humanity.
Wow. I wrote down a couple of notes. It's that trouble question again. A couple of things came to mind in response to your question, and I thought I should come to this later, but I think it's a big one. So the heart of the question is asking what we can do to improve access. I struggle a little bit with that question because I think sometimes it prompts us to look at ineffective solutions. If we're really looking to if we want to heal, period. If it's individually, community-wise, societally as a whole, we actually have to focus on making sure a lot of the avoidable issues don't develop in the first place. It is about prevention. If a lot of the things that we're seeing are caused by or exacerbated by different types of traumas, I don't know how many people here are familiar with ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. What we've learned based on research is that it significantly influences just somebody's entire lifespan. The problems that they're going to develop. The person's recovery process, their health outcomes, their social relationships, everything. Their resiliency. Adverse childhood experiences are traumas. A lot of the ones that we experience, they're interpersonal. If we can stop traumatizing each other, we won't need more providers because there will be less of us who are sick. Period. We are trying to resolve a problem, but just adding on instead of resolving. So one thing that I say a lot is we need to stop picking off the leaves of the weeds and start digging them up by their roots. It's not going to get better if we don't do that. The other part's like it does become like this cyclical process. It is Elizabeth mentioned we have to be looking at work culture a lot. Where a lot of people, because of what they're aware can happen in different workspaces, based on previous experiences that they've had, that's going to influence what environments they're willing to work in. One of the things I personally look for is environments that are very open and welcoming of direct, clear conversations about not just the things that the organization does well, but what they're struggling with. And when they come up, who's going to deal with the problem? Instead of we're just talking behind each other's back or pretending that it doesn't exist, looking at the person sideways and treating it like a problem when they're looking to deal with it. It's about refining balance. What does the organization need to do the work that they're trying to do, but what does also the individuals who are working for that organization need? Because it's hard to work effectively together if there are so many barriers because you can't even address what the issues are. And when you have a great environment, but also, when you have a great environment, a lot of people are going to work there when they're capable of doing good work and sustaining the good work. It advertises itself. Like Elizabeth mentioned, her mentor. When we're able to see people who do great work, people who move us, who inspire us, we naturally want to do that work. But it's hard for us to those people who to be inspirational if they're not healthy. So then it goes back to the issue. We have to prevent a lot of these preventable issues from happening in the first place. And then resolving them as quickly and as effectively as possible when they do happen.
All right, one more. We're going to try to take 2 more questions, okay?
Hi, my name is Anino Omatsola, and I'm a mom of Ethan. He goes to one of the schools in Tacoma, Sammy. I'm here because I saw the flyer, and I was really happy to be here because therapy has helped me in tremendous ways, and is also helping my son and both my sons right now. Just a pinch of my history, nothing too heavy. I've been through multiple traumas from childhood up until, let's say, yesterday, consistently, which pushed me to the point of suicide twice. But faith stepped in and pulled me away from it and pushed me out to service. So what I mean is that I'm a poet. So I write poems from most of the trauma, and it's heavily faith-based, but it's very connected. So I speak to a lot of youth, a lot of young people, and I write from a perspective of love and healing. So I have a website, and it's called Lyrical Ethereal. I also kind of on Instagram, I'm trying to reach the generation. I talk to a lot of my kids' peers. I talk to a lot of young people. What's going on? Why are you feeling this way? What happened? Why? And so there's a lot of, it's like a heavy, I would call it calling of mine, based on my own experiences. But the question I have is, first of all, thank you for what you guys do. I spent like a year in therapy, and that was extremely helpful in managing my emotions, not being dysregulated and staying in the green zone and all that good stuff. But my real question is, I mean, in terms of real connection to like this generation, their generation in particular, with all the stuff going on, how do I help with my work? How do I help with the poems? How do I help creating a community of some sort? How do I connect to people like you? When I write the poems, I also talk about if you're in crisis, go to this place, do that on my blog. I write that a lot. I also talk about real stuff, raw stuff, but in a very gentle way that's not triggering. But I think I really want to know, how does someone like me, who's not a therapist, I've homeschooled, I'm a designer, but I'm not a therapist. How do I help, and continue to grow this community that's definitely out there, and support them through work, words, talking, poems, I don't know what else. I just want to be a help. So I was just wondering, how can I help using Instagram or my blog or talking to students or encouraging people? So that's just my question.
I am a big TikTok person, and it's helped a lot. And it is about getting your name out there, using the avenues that are there, and obviously sharing your story. I believe in communication as very important for us to put our work out there. So I would recommend those social media platforms and any opportunity you have to speak.
Yeah, I would say any opportunities like to get connected to mentorship. It could be through community centers, or if community centers are doing events, doing things like that. I mean, that's where I started. I didn't start off as a therapist. I started off doing mentoring. At first it was through a community center. Then I started, doing homeless feeds to the youth in the community. I started in after-school programs. And then eventually those after-school programs, I noticed a lot of the kids would go home and their parents weren't home. That led to me eventually getting tied to CPS, and then CPS doing respite. And so I just got tied to all these systems. And so a lot of it is just being tied to different things. Ended up being connected to the poorest community center in Spokane. And then I started working there in the after school program, picking up kids. So there's so many ways you could get tied. You could start out at a community center and then, maybe perform at a community event with youth. So there's so many ways you could get connected, especially in Tacoma. There's so much prevention happening here, especially to get youth out of trouble with so much gang violence on the east side. There's tons of ways to get connected. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that you could be utilized and do a lot of really good impact.
So I'm here because a young person recommended me to their executive director. And most of my students, I think that they connected with me because of the way I came to them genuinely, authentically, and I gave them something that they felt was very useful and beneficial to helping them become their best self, which is what I promote in all the classes that I teach. I think that you have a special gift, a unique gift, and your experiences can be reflected in your poetry and in your way that you engage. I think one of your best resources to help you get to the youth is sitting right to your right hand. Him and his posse or his group of people that he work with, if you can connect with them and help them to see the value behind what you're providing, the word will get out and people will want to hear more from you. When it comes to connecting with us, I go with what David and Elizabeth said as well. We're out here. We look for people that got experiences that they can share that will have a positive influence on other people that need that kind of support and help. There's some experiences that you have had that will help somebody draw them from the ledge and help them to see that this life is worth living if you got the right support to help you walk this way.
All I'll add to that is I worked at Clemson University as a coordinator for consultation and outreach, and 1,000,000% it's reaching out to local organizations and just people that you meet on a regular basis, asking what they're hoping for and seeing how you can it connects to what you do. And then also sometimes like tailoring what you do to the kind of support that they need, so collaborating together and how that works. There is an organization in Seattle, Imagine Justice, and they use a lot of creative activities and artwork to process the things that they've been through and teaching young people how to do that. And so connecting with organizations like them and either just other organizations in your communities where you might be open to offering such services to help people connect. Finding opportunities and creating them.
David, you want to add to it?
No.
Okay, no problem. So I just didn't gauge the time correctly. I do apologize. We do not have time for additional question, but I'm sure our panelists will hang for a little bit to have some off-the-camera conversations. But we do want to give each of you all a chance to have your final thoughts for tonight. So I'm going to pick on David one more time.
I guess I would just say us helping us is really important in this work that we do. And regardless sometimes of obviously skin color, but the fact that we are willing to be available to support one another is really key work for all of us.
I don't have anything to add.
I'm sorry, I forgot the question. Just final thoughts. So, odd moment. I just had a flash of Jerry Springer. I'm sorry, I'm sure different things pop up for different people. Steve. But what he ended his show with on a regular basis was just right. Take care of yourselves and each other.
The last thing I would end with is that in order to be your best self, to support someone else, work on being your best self. As long as you are being your best self, appreciating everything that make you uniquely who you are, you can be your best self for other people to help them become and be their best self.
Thank you, panelists. We do have some of you all may have already picked them up, but we do have some tip sheets, best practices and resources available for you. Some of the wonderful things that our panelists talked about tonight, some of the organizations that you can connect with. So please feel free to pick up those resources. We created them especially for you. We want to give a special shout out to Elizabeth for doing the work on that. And now we would like to bring up our executive director to have a few closing words.
Thank you. A huge round of applause, please, for Keishawna as the moderator and to these amazing panelists. I don't know where to stand to not block some of you, all of you. I am so glad this was recorded. You know, we were competing against like Seahawks and Mariners and all that nonsense. But the people who are going to watch this afterwards includes me, because y'all were so quotable. There was so much wisdom. So much wisdom. So you took a hard topic and you were real about it. And there is also a whole lot of love and hope and wisdom, right? Anyway, I was really grateful that TACID was able to put this on, and I hope lots of people watch this. If you enjoyed this is my pitch. If you enjoyed this and would like TACID to do more things like this, you can take your little QR code thing and donate to TACID. We do all of our work with just by donation only. So if you are compelled, I encourage you to QR code a donation. The cards are over on the table right by all the tip sheets. And with that, I want to say, and there's one other special thing that Khalila brought. So.
If anyone is interested, I brought some wax melts and put them on the table back here. They're basically candles that don't have a wick. You can use a wax melter to kind of take the scent and have it perforate through the room, or in working with college students, since they weren't allowed to have candles in their rooms, some of them would just put them in their book bags, and whenever they opened the pocket, it would, And they found it very, very grounding. Use it for sensory grounding. We have peppermint, lavender, lemon verbena, and I think vanilla. And then there's some little bags if you'd like to put them in. And I appreciate some people may be scent sensitive, so take it right before you leave.
That's great. Thank you. And one final thank you to Rebecca at Sound and Cooper with the video. Made it all possible. And with that, we say thank you again and have a great night.